Chaos erupted. The company's entire system crashed. Emails dead, dashboards blank, orders stuck in limbo. Customers were raging. Millions of dollars were on the line. And the CEO? He lost it, shouted at managers, humiliated engineers, smashed a laptop against the wall. But no one expected the person who would fix everything. Wasn't even an employee. It was the janitor's kid. A 15-year-old who quietly walked into the disaster and did what no expert in that building could do. He brought the system back online. It was just after 9 a.m. at Ionex Technologies, a sleek, fast-moving tech firm in downtown Chicago. Inside the main office, all glass walls, standing desks and whiteboards full of code. The day had started like any other. Team leads were in morning stand-ups. Analysts were on calls. Developers had music in their headphones and coffee in hand. Everything was smooth until in the span of 5 seconds everything stopped. First one monitor froze, then another. Slack disconnected. CRM crashed. Multiple people stood up at once, confused. Anyone else seeing this? Wait, why can't I open the dashboard? My screen's blank. Then came the flood of alerts. Dozens of support tickets. Emails from furious clients. Screens filled with error messages and red flashing notifications. Orders weren't being processed. Data wasn't syncing. Every second meant money lost. Not just a little, but hundreds of thousands. And worst of all, no one could explain why. The internal system, the same one that powered operations for hundreds of businesses, had gone completely offline. Backup protocols weren't responding. Redundancies failed. It was like someone had yanked the power cord out of the company's heart. Down in the IT war room, panic set in. Zach, the lead infrastructure engineer, was frantically typing commands. Jasmine, the software lead, was already on her 4th espresso, eyes locked on a server dashboard that was flashing red in every corner. No one was talking, just typing, breathing hard, staring at the monitors like they were about to catch fire. Then, the elevator dinged. Everyone froze. Gerald Strickland, the CEO, stepped out. Tailored charcoal suit, perfect posture, a presence that felt more like a storm front than a person. When Gerald walked into a room, people made space. And this time they didn't just move, and they braced. He looked around the silent room like a lion entering a den of limping prey. What the hell is happening? No one answered. Do you people know how many zeros were in the deal we just blew with Stellarcore? They were halfway through onboarding when we disappeared. Zach stood up. Sir, we're looking at a possible failure in... In what? Gerald snapped. You built this. You had months. You told me it was bulletproof. We've isolated it to a back end. I don't want your guesswork, I want it fixed. And if you can't do that, get the hell out of my building. His voice echoed. Phones were still ringing. One junior engineer quietly wiped a tear from her face. A laptop was slammed shut. Someone dropped their energy drink. No one dared make eye contact. Across the hallway, unnoticed in the noise, stood Eddie, the janitor. He'd just finished his shift and was waiting near HR to sign a timesheet. He hadn't planned to stay long. With him was his 15-year-old son, Luis, a slim kid in a hoodie, earbuds in, hands in his pocket. Luis had come with his dad because his school was closed for teacher planning day. Eddie had figured he'd sit quietly in the break room with his phone, but instead Luis was standing outside the glass-walled IT room, watching everything unfold with quiet focus. He wasn't overwhelmed. He was curious. Luis had been into tech since he was 10. He taught himself Python, C++, and even messed around with open-source database software. He built a private gaming server on an old laptop he pulled from a recycling bin. He read forums the way other kids read comics. And now, he was staring at a problem he recognized. Dad, Luis said softly, tugging on his sleeve, I think I know what's wrong. Eddie blinked. What? The crash logs. Look at that one on the right. Luis pointed through the glass. That's a memory leak. From the logging module. It happened in the new update 2 weeks ago. Eddie looked at his son like he was speaking another language. They're using the open source version, Luis continued. The config file wasn't patched. It leaks under high load. If they're pushing tons of data, it would flood memory and force a system shutdown. He said it calmly, like it wasn't insane that he understood what was happening better than the paid professionals inside. "Luis, I don't think," Eddie started. "Just let me show someone, please." Eddie hesitated. This wasn't their world. He was the guy people didn't even say hello to in the halls. And his son? Just a kid with a backpack and a cracked phone screen. But he'd never seen Luis more certain. Eddie took a breath, walked to the doorway, and gently knocked. "Excuse me," he said. Heads turned. Gerald turned. "I'm sorry, I know this ain't my place," Eddie began, his voice steady but quiet. "This is my son, Luis. He thinks he knows what's causing the issue." Gerald stared, blinking slowly like he wasn't sure what he'd just heard. "Your son?" he asked flatly. "Yes, sir. He's into programming, and he saw something in the logs." "This isn't a science fair." "I know. I wouldn't say anything if he wasn't sure." There was a pause. Someone laughed under their breath near the back, but Jasmine, still staring at her monitor, suddenly froze. What did he say the issue was? Luis stepped closer. "The logger. You updated it last week, right? But the config file is still default. That version has a known memory leak. If it hits more than 80% usage, it spikes RAM and dumps the process." Zach leaned in, reading the line Luis pointed at through the glass. "Wait," he muttered. "He's not wrong." Gerald looked at Jasmine. She was typing furiously. Lines of code flew. She opened a forum, read it, searched for the module. There it was. Same bug, same pattern, exact failure symptoms. She looked up. "I's absolutely right." The room went silent. Gerald blinked, hard, and Luis just stood there, calm, like it was the most normal thing in the world. If this story has your attention, hit subscribe now, because what happens next will turn everything upside down. Trust me, it only gets more intense from here. Jasmine didn't waste a second. She pulled Luis into the room, past stunned engineers and confused execs, and sat him at an unused terminal. "Okay, walk me through exactly what you did," she said. Luis sat down slowly. His fingers hovered over the keyboard, unsure if he was even allowed to touch anything. Jasmine nodded at him. "Go. I've got rollback snapshots if anything breaks." He exhaled, focused, then began typing. First, he opened the config for the logging service. Jasmine watched over his shoulder, eyebrows raised. "No override set," he muttered. "They never patched the memory cap." He edited 2 lines of code, then added a manual memory limiter. Next, he rerouted the log queue to a temp archive, isolating the overflow traffic. "Now, if the load spikes again, it won't flood the primary RAM," Luis said, mostly to himself. Jasmine was already testing the new configuration in a container. The difference was instant. Error logs stopped. RAM usage dropped by 42%. The server came back to life. People gasped. Across the floor, screens flickered back on. Client dashboards reloaded. Support phones quieted. Zach called out from the back, "We're live again. Systems are stable." The room burst into motion, but now it was the good kind. People high-fived. Someone clapped. A support rep whispered, "He actually fixed it," in disbelief. And Gerald, he stood still, arms crossed, watching a 15-year-old kid in worn-out sneakers, quietly doing what his entire 6-figure team couldn't pull off for the past 2 hours. For a moment, no one spoke to him. He walked over slowly and looked at Eddie. "What's your son's name?" "Luis," Eddie replied. Gerald turned to Luis. "You just saved this company from a PR disaster, maybe even a lawsuit." He paused. "How did you even know where to look?" Luis shrugged. "I read a lot, and I break stuff on my laptop all the time, so I've seen that bug before." Gerald stared at him for a moment, then actually let out a short, dry laugh. "Remind me to talk to HR about who we're hiring." Jasmine leaned over to Luis. "Hey, seriously? You ever want an internship? Or even just to hang around more often? Let me know. That was insane." Luis looked at his dad. Eddie smiled, proud but still trying to stay invisible in a room full of executives. Luis looked back and said, "Only if he comes with me." Jasmine grinned. Across the office, calls were being made to update the board, calm investors, and reassure clients. The official story would be polished, of course, blame placed on a third-party integration error or something clean-sounding. But the people in that room? They knew who really saved the day. And they'd never look at the janitor or his son the same way again.